What's happening, guys and girls? Acrinator here, and welcome to the 8th episode of the Counting Pixelated Sheep podcast. I am joined by my partner in crime and co-host for this podcast, Sirjohnmac.
Hi!
And today we have 4 new articles for you, the order of which will be as follows. The Dark Souls board game gets crowdfunded in 3 minutes. Overwatch truck crashes at PAX East. The gaming market 2016 estimates are in, and mobile is estimated to overtake every other platform. And a Smite streamer has a controversy over a suicide comment or donation message. So with that being said, let's get straight into the first article, which is the Dark Souls board game, funded in 3 goddamn minutes. That is insane. So its goal was £50,000, which is, John, if you want to do conversions for me.
It was actually 50,000. That was 50,000 euros, wasn't it? Which is like 70.
Oh yes.
About 70,000 US
euros.
dollars.
My mistake. Yeah, and now they have over 1.4 million euros. So it's a lot. They hit their goal in 3 minutes, and from the looks of it, they were marketing this a long time before the Kickstarter officially started. One thing that stuck out to me in the Kickstarter page, which there'll always be a link to everything that we reference in the description below if you're looking for it, including this Kickstarter, is that there's only 3 tiers. The first tier was $75, and there's only 1,000 of them, and it says Souls Pledge Early Bird, Dark Souls board game, and applicable stretch goals. I'm not really sure what the early bird thing means. Normally, I'd assume if you got the game earlier or something, you'd pay more for that, but I don't know how this works. And then the normal pledge, which is 80 euros. Did I say pounds? Or yeah, the first one was 75 euros. The second one is 80 euros, and over 13,000 people have bought that. And then the third and largest tier is 200 euros, which only about 250-ish people have backed that one, and that one just gives 6 copies of the board game. Holy hell.
Yeah, it's retail stores only. So you have to be a retail store. I'm not one, so.
Oh yes, retail store. So I assume only. We don't have any local board game places.
Yeah.
Damn, they can only buy and Kickstarter. I know because I just backed a band a couple weeks ago. Actually, you have to make separate accounts for making multiple pledges. You can't add on to your pledge. You can't do it. You can. I don't know if you can rescind your pledge. I've never tried that, and I haven't heard of anyone doing that and then making a new pledge. But I couldn't imagine that wouldn't be possible. I'd imagine that could be possible, I guess would be the easier way to say that. Yeah, and I'm not a Souls player. It's just not my type of game, but I definitely know enough about it. And the board game, especially from the trailer that they show, that they have in the Kickstarter page, definitely appears to be very difficult. They did have some dice rolling mechanics, but from what the players were saying, they were talking more about resource management. There was stamina and life, and you had to sort of calculate out the balance between those, which I guess that sounds like the game itself. I've seen some gameplay of the most recent Dark Souls 3, I believe. Again, I don't play it. I don't really plan on playing it. It's just not my kind of game. And there are, let me just say, a lot of stretch goals. At least I believe they're stretch goals. They haven't number amounts on them, and they have reached a lot of them. The only 2 that they haven't so far have been the 1.45 million and the 1.5 million euro marks, which I don't know if that's all the stretch goals that they came up with, or if they're just slowly adding a few as they continually go on, which a lot of the stretch goals include behavior cards, which I'd assume, they augment the enemies. I don't know if they make them harder, probably, knowing Dark Souls. Different player characters. I can imagine those are fun. It looks like every other one is either... Oh, no, never mind. I was going to say every other one appears to be a behavior set or a player character, but it just seems to be random between different enemies, alteration cards, and characters, whether those be characters that you get to control or whatnot. Have anything you'd like to add to the information, John?
I think it's worth noting at least that the suggest like it's 1 to 4 players, which is kind of cool. Like you can just play a board game like completely solo.
Yeah, right.
I don't know how much that affects like the balance of the game. Obviously, I haven't played it since it's
No
not
one
out
has
yet.
seen. Well, take this with a grain of salt since it's their Kickstarter, but no one in the trailer seemed disappointed. They didn't really have much criticism, and taking into account the number from which they've raised, I'd say that might be the majority of the case. There's probably nitpicks, but I think the majority of people are pretty damn happy with it.
Mm. Yeah, I would say like the number one factor against me playing board games is not really knowing a lot of other people like besides online.
Yeah,
Um,
like it's hard to get the time to meet people in real life and sit down and play the games. That's usually why I don't bother. It's just the time investment. I once played a 13-hour game of Monopoly. It was 1v1. It was fun is a word for it. Tedious is probably more accurate. I
and
lost.
yeah, and the second deterrent against me playing board games is the complexity, which the Dark Souls game doesn't fix at all.
Yeah. Although
It,
people did, well, again, take this with a grain of salt, but the people in the trailer seemed to say it was relatively simple to get the hang of, but there was a lot more complexity in terms of like when you really get into it, like the nitty gritty.
I'd say it definitely looks like a game with a lot of depth.
Yeah, I believe their catchphrase for this game was "Prepare to die," so I think they took that part of Dark Souls very seriously. They said like it's easy to get into, but it's very easy to die.
Hmm.
Let's see, in just the core game contents, I believe this is before any of the stretch goals were met. Is like 3 boss models, 3 mini boss models, 4 player character models, 4 large grunt, 12 grunt, 7 double sided game tiles, 4 player character boards, 3 boss dials for tracking damage. Oh god. 60 equipment cards, 40 treasure cards, 26 boss AI cards, AI, 36 encounter cards, 15 colored dice, and 100 plus game tokens. Yeah, dice. So there's definitely some level of randomness in this, but I think with enough management of resources, I think you can minimize that. I'd assume. I'd hope so. Otherwise, people probably wouldn't be too happy with that. And at the very bottom it says "Prepare to die." You'll probably see the picture above while I'm listing those off.
Mm.
It is also worth mentioning that I forgot to say before that this is officially licensed by From Software, by the official developers of the Souls franchise. So it is like completely official. Imagine if a company tried to do this without like collaborating with the game dev.
Oh god.
That would
Yeah,
be hysterical. Like
yeah.
the forgiveness is easier to ask than permission doesn't really apply to copyright.
No.
I'd like to see someone. Well, I
Oh,
don't want to see someone try, but it would be quite the debacle to see someone try,
yeah. I mean, it'd be a feat not too unlike beating Dark Souls with 1 life.
or with a Guitar Hero controller.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. Do you have anything in particular to say?
I think I said my part.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't have anything more to say. I think it's just this was so worth mentioning because I mean, goddamn, 3 minutes. Like that's
Yeah.
ridiculous. Like they must have been tweeting and like freaking everything, like announcing it to the high heavens the day before. Like, be prepared for this.
Oh, I mean, what better time to come out with a Dark Souls board game than
Oh, absolutely.
immediately after?
I'm sure they were already in uh, coordination with each other. The Steam Forged Games, the people developing this board game, and the From Software. I'm sure they were already talking about this while the game was still being developed, and they were waiting for it. And I'm sure they easily could have funded this with, their own out-of-pocket expenses with, how popular Dark Souls is, but it's nothing quite like fan funding.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's all I really have. So let's move on to the next topic, which is going to be a shorter story, but I think it's interesting, if not kind of funny, mostly because people didn't get hurt, which is the Overwatch truck crash at PAX East. Now, this is basically there is a service, or is or was, I'm not sure if PAX East is still going on at this point, probably not by the time this video comes out, is it's sort of like an Uber service, but with like Overwatch vehicles, called Uberwatch, of course, right? And there were people in the Soldier 76's truck. For those of you who don't know, Soldier 76, he's one of the characters from Overwatch. One of the lesser known ones. I actually got into the Overwatch server stress test a few weeks back, and I got to play a little bit. I didn't play too much because I had homework that weekend, but I did get to play like an hour or two, and I was like, who the hell is this guy? Soldier 76, because he's the guy that they give you for the tutorial, actually. He's very, very, what you'd consider like a standard shooter. He has like the assault rifle and, very similar stuff to what you'd equate to like Halo or Call of Duty, stuff like that. And I guess the truck that they were in, it's like a big truck. Like if you've ever seen like the bigger Ford like F350, 450, 550, like my brother does landscaping, and he has a 550. That thing is a fucking beast. And this probably looks, my guess is probably like either a 350 or 450 because it's freaking huge. And it apparently like scraped the side of a smaller car and then actually started to go on top. And there were some rather interesting people in that truck. It was Dodger, or Press Hard to Continue, however you know her on YouTube. What's his face, John? The Gearbox guy, Randy Pitchford.
Yeah, that
he
one.
was in that truck. I believe Strippin, Dodger's fiance, was in the truck as well. And they said like they didn't even realize that the truck started running over. They didn't feel anything. They just noticed that there was a lot of honking, and then people got out and started waving. And the driver was like, "Yeah, you're gonna have to sit here for a while." Actually, I can, instead of describing it myself, you can just go to the link below, and I've actually shared the link directly to when they start talking about that. So you could hear Dodger say for herself in the co-optional podcast live at PAX East, where they describe it. It's actually pretty interesting and pretty entertaining how they say it. Luckily, no one got hurt other than the car, which, at least from the picture that you'll see above, it appears like that's the car right next to the truck. You can see how monstrous the truck is. It's freaking huge, let's be honest. It appears like that's the car because it almost looks like the moonroof for that car is shattered partially, and that I can imagine that would happen if if a truck starts to run over it. Yeah, I don't know. That's really all it is to this story, unfortunately. Well, fortunately, I guess, to a degree.
Another thing that I'll mention is the Uberwatch thing had 3 different vehicles and characters associated with them. Soldier 76, as we mentioned, in the Ford Super Truck, and the other 2 were Tracer in a Lamborghini Aventador, and Diva in a Polaris Slingshot, which, if you don't know what are those...
I remember they were joking about that, too. Jesse Cox was like, I should have gone in the Diva one, or something. It's like a little ball, I think they said.
Out of all of the cars that could have crashed, that would probably be the best one to be in.
Yeah.
All the vehicles.
The 76 one or the Diva?
The Super Truck.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like, when I was in high school, I think around sophomore or junior year, it was like downpouring to all hell. We were going to school. I was in a school bus, and a car behind us hit the brakes, and the brakes didn't happen. So they hit us, except we didn't feel anything. The bus didn't move, nothing. We just heard a bang, and my friends and I were sitting in the back, and we looked back because the door's right there, and we're like, what the hell? And we see a car, like, front completely crumpled. The hood was like bent up into a bowl, and it was collecting water, and the water was so heavy that it was actually pushing the hood back down, and then it would like flow over into the engine. The hood would go back up into a bowl. It was really funny. And that was literally just from hitting the bus. We did not feel a thing. Now, obviously, the bus is much, much larger, but like, I could definitely attest to not feeling absolutely anything. Like, you wouldn't know if you ran over a goddamn like minibus. Just, you don't feel it. Those things are meant to not feel. They are emotionless killing machines. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess like Luckily, no one got hurt, and Blizzard and Uber, neither of them have responded to requests to comment on it. I can imagine they don't want to either. It's like, well, shit, that driver is taken care of.
Never be seen from again.
Until they respawn.
They'll have to like balance shamans for the rest of their days.
Anyways, I think we can move on to the third article, which is the gaming market estimates. Excuse me, which is basically the global games market is estimated to reach $99.6 billion revenue in 2016, which the majority of it, for the first time ever, is estimated to be mobile, which will actually beat out PC and consoles, which is actually pretty interesting to say. And it says, like usual, China is one of the largest sources for that. Yeah, their mobile market is growing huge. I believe we actually talked about something like a few months back in one of the earlier podcasts where we were talking about like cost of entry and stuff, and China was like one of the biggest for mobile games. They're also one of the most difficult because of all the customs that they have to go through into porting games in. That's why a lot of games don't usually get in. Like World of Warcraft is an anomaly in that regard. Speaking of which, I wonder if they got mists. I know there's a lot of censoring they have to do for that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a Chinese-based expansion, so they have to be careful.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe not, I don't know. I know Wrath took forever because they had to take out everything that had bones, which is basically the entire Scourge.
Yeah.
Like, you can't show bones, and Blizzard's just like, shit.
Yeah, that's like trying to import Pandaria and you can't show pandas.
I can't imagine they have any problem with pandas.
Nah.
They freaking love pandas over there, I'd hope, at least. They're so fluffy. So, yeah. You have anything to say on this, John?
Well, I think it's interesting, though not unexpected, to see how mobile gaming is growing.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And for it to surpass both PC and consoles in revenue, that's actually, because most like mobile games are like a couple bucks at most with microtransactions, which probably add up. I mean, most of the like really popular, like the developers behind Clash of Clans, Clash Royale, those are the same one. All those really popular, like, A-list mobile games are just making money hand over fist from, like, microtransactions and stuff.
Let's see, it looks like they're estimating mobile to make, of the 99.6 billion that they're estimating for it to make in 2016, they're estimating that mobile will make up 36.9 billion.
Okay, so not the majority, but still a pretty dang...
It's the highest percentage of any single entity or platform, I should say.
Right.
And it appears like it was very close to overtaking PC. I think it did overtake consoles in 2015. Although I can't find exact numbers on that. They expect it to reach over 100 billion by the time 2019 happens. With the addition of VR.
Someday. Someday.
Yeah, I don't know. VR doesn't excite me, you know? Like, to really excite me, I think VR would have to reach the level of, like, how it does in, like, fictional stories, you know, when you take, like, Sword Art Online, Log Horizon, .hack, where they, like, get their entire consciousness and, like, being transported into a game, but there's too many ethical and biological issues with that. Like, what happens if the servers crash? You just killed, like, thousands of people. you just turned like 10,000 people into fucking vegetables. So that's not gonna happen. You know, don't get too excited about that. It's never gonna happen. I think the closest it would
Yeah.
ever happen is if they, I can imagine like Bill Gates already has this. He has like a room that's basically like a sphere, and you put on like the gloves and the boots and the helmet, and you just like fucking, you can punch and run all you want because you're not gonna hit anything. I
Mm.
think that's like as far as it would ever go because you can't. There's too many issues as well as complications in messing with the human consciousness because there's
Yeah.
no way to necessarily replicate that, and it's very, very, very gray area to take that out of the brain. Just like
Mm.
shut down the brain, replicate that inside of um, basically a closed circuit in some sort of computer. Ignoring like all the storage logistics, like
Yeah.
what was it? It was like the human brain's estimated to take up like some stupid amount of storage, like well over what any computer can at today's day and age. Right? I don't know the exact.
Over a petabyte, I believe.
Yeah, or 4 petabytes. That sounds familiar. The
Um,
number four sound. I don't know. Doesn't matter.
the full spectrum of guesses range between 1 terabyte to 2.5 petabytes.
Okay. Yeah, that's way. Like I know someone probably about 5 years ago now came up with like this experiment hard drive for like 1 petabyte, and like no one fucking used it because no one. I have like a terabyte, and I've barely used like 200 gigs. Like it's easy to use like
Mm.
200, 300 gigs, but like I have trouble using up an entire terabyte. Although I'm very conservative with what I keep. I can delete a lot of the stuff that I make after a while because I don't want it to be cataloged like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't imagine VR making up that much of a difference over time. But I don't know. I could be completely wrong. There are those people out there. I mean, look at the craze of VR right now. It's like,
Mm.
what are the big ones in the block right now? Like HTC Vive and Oculus Rift. Well, Oculus has always been.
Yeah.
They were sort of the ones who started this craze.
Mm.
I certainly think it's cool, but I would never really get so indulged in it
Well,
personally.
it still excites me a bit, but like not $600 excites
Yeah, I couldn't honestly
excitement.
like. I don't know. One of the things I really don't like about it is that you have to become isolated to a degree. You have to like,
Mm.
take the time to put on the gear and stuff like that, and you can't really interact with stuff around you, ignoring the possibility of like punching a hole through your monitor or something like that. It's not for me.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I don't think it should exist or I think it's stupid. It's just certainly
Oh,
not something that I would ever indulge in. I'm
yeah.
fine with having my computer, and and I still am uh, attempting to get a second monitor because that's going to help a lot more with just like schoolwork, let alone YouTube and/or streaming. But
Mm.
mostly for schoolwork because there's so many times where I'm typing something and I have to switch back and forth between like 3 different tabs to write a research paper, and it's just a pain in the ass.
Mm.
Anyways, that's really all I have for this article as well. The one article that we have probably a lot to say about is the final article, which has not so much been blowing up lately, but it's probably one of the bigger ones. You've probably actually heard of it, probably the only one that you've heard of, unless you watch Total Biscuit's co-optional podcast, and you probably heard of the Dodgers' recollection of the crash. Anyways,
Mm.
do you have anything else to say for this article?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, so the final article has, like I said, been relatively popular as of late, and that is the Smite streamer. I forget his name, screen name, but he basically made a controversial statement about suicide. Basically, a fan sent him a message on Twitch saying, like, I was contemplating suicide, or possibly they even attempted suicide about a year ago, and they messaged him saying, like, I found Smite, and I found your stream. I just want to thank you for being a positive outlet that I can, latch onto and want to live, I guess. And the guy, what's his screen name?
DM Grandin.
DM Brandon. Yeah, his actual name's Brandon Nance. He's a streamer slash what do you call it? Caster,
Commentator.
commentator, caster, whatever.
Yeah.
And he basically said like, he basically like
Oh,
shut the guy down more or less. He just said like, you're an asshole.
I
Or
have the
here's what there are a lot of streamers out there that would appreciate that message, I'm just going to call you an asshole. It's a selfish and stupid thing to do. And he goes on like that. He continues on saying, like, don't. I don't know. Just don't. It's more or less the message he was trying to get across. And there's like a full video of his rant. And he basically got a lot of slack for this. I can't figure out if he left or he was fired. I think he was left. He said he left, but yeah, it appeared like he left because he was a caster for Smite as well. And then he later posted a long-winded apology, which you can find in the description below, because it wouldn't be right to talk about this article without that bit of context. It's very,
Right.
very lengthy, though. We did, in fact, read it before the recording of this. But we're not going to read it here because that would take like 4 hours.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's nice that he apologized, but I feel like regardless of the shit that you go through, and trust me when I say if you read this guy's post, he supposedly has gone through a lot of shit, that doesn't excuse that sort of behavior. And that doesn't excuse that sort of thing. Like, that is the worst thing you can say to someone who just gave you goddamn money to say thank you for being an outlet that I can enjoy life through.
Yeah.
And then you say, fuck off. I'm keeping the money. It's like, really? Really? All you had to say was, like, thank you. And move on. It's like such a dick move. Like, I've been fortunate enough to never have to know anyone. Not have to. I've been fortunate enough that no one I know has contemplated suicide or attempted it or anything. But that's still... That's just it. I can't imagine, like, what it must feel like. And that probably just crushed the person. Like, he did say in his long-winded apology that he personally messaged the person if they want to let out the exact details of what he said to them. That's on them, but he's not going to for their privacy. I don't know. It just feels like a really dick move, regardless of whether you apologize or not. There's a certain level at which common decency kicks in. And while you do garner some respect for apologizing, it doesn't excuse everything when it's to that degree. I mean, what do you think, John?
Well, I mean, one thing I'll say is that now that the dude who donated, who had been grappling with suicide, like, in using Smite and DM Brandon's commentating, streaming as, like, a distraction, as an outlet, now that's, like, all they're going to associate his content with, and probably even that game with, which is really unfortunate.
Like, I can definitely see them not wanting to watch him anymore. Although he did apologize relatively soon, so who knows if they forgive him, if whatever helps them find happiness, I guess, is all right. But I certainly hope, if nothing else, that they don't associate Smite with that stress, because that would just be horrible, having to find some other vice.
Yeah.
Like, that's just awful.
And the other thing is, what was the other thing? Like, one of the big things that I've been told that people who struggle with suicide, something that's really heavy in their mind is their sense of, like, self-worth.
Yeah.
And something like this can completely demolish that.
Yeah, definitely. Like, they said, like, they attempted it last August, I think, and this happened, like, maybe a week ago by the time this video comes out. But, like, that's still, like, something... I don't think that's something that would go away over time. I mean, it was certainly dull, but I don't think that would ever quite leave, those deep, dark thoughts. I mean, like, anyone in the comments, if you have experience with this, personal or indirect, I mean, please add into the conversation. But, like, I can't imagine that's something that would permanently leave. I feel like that would be ever in the background haunting, and if someone does manage to survive that, they would just find a successful way to hold it at bay.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's overall just a really shitty situation.
Yeah.
Like it's like I said before. Apologies aside, there's just some things that you don't do. It doesn't matter. Like some of the things he says aren't wrong. And I want to put this into complete context first. He says things like, everyone goes through anxiety, everyone goes through depression. I'm not sure if everyone goes through full-blown depression, but people get depressed. That's certainly true, but using it in the context that he used it in is absolutely wrong. It's like using that to belittle someone else's problems is absolutely terrible. It's wrong, it's a dick move, and it's just terrible. It's like and he even says like he doesn't like talking about that sort of thing because of the problems that he's faced throughout his life. Regardless, that I can feel for him until he does something like this. Then the pity's gone. It's just like it's like there's a bully. It's like, oh, they're bullied themselves. Well, tough shit. I would have pitied them until they bully someone else, because they know more than anyone what it's like to be the victim. So why would they want to put that pain onto someone else? They get my pity until they begin to bully someone else. Then they're no better than the original bully who's bullying them. At least that's the way I see it, and I don't think I'm too far-fetched in that regard. It's like there's certain lines that you can cross and apologize, and that is certainly not one of them.
Yeah, it's almost like the dude just, like, if DM Brandon really did have, real deep depression and maybe even suicidal thoughts, like, have some empathy, come on.
Yeah, it's like, I know he said, like, plenty of times, like, he was bottling it up and stuff, and that's, that's perfectly empathizable, I guess. Is like, I can empathize with him for that. Like, yes, I can feel for you that you suffered through this. No, that does not make what you said in the remotest of ways okay. There's absolutely no reason why that should happen. And, he has every right to lose his job over that. That is something that like, you just cannot do that. Like, regardless of how shitty of a day you have, all he had to do is say 2 simple words, and that's it. Just 2 simple words and shut up. Thank you.
Yeah.
Or just thanks.
Even more than just, like, his own brand being completely dragged through the mud pretty much by his own doing, but also, like, representing high res.
Yeah.
Like,
as a prominent caster.
Yeah.
Of Smite, which is becoming a very large MOBA, is I believe the first MOBA that's going PC and console, if I'm correct, right? It's one of the first, if not one of the biggest. I know it's one of the bigger MOBAs out there. I almost said MMOs.
Yeah, it says it's on PC, Xbone, and PS4, so...
Yeah, I wonder if it's cross-platform.
I feel like a MOBA is one of the things that would actually maybe work.
Similar to, like, Rocket League, that works cross-platform. I don't know. I've actually looked at Smite before, and it's probably one of the most interesting MOBAs to me, besides, like, Heroes of the Storm. MOBAs aren't my kind of thing. I've tried, like, maybe 2 games of Dota and did the tutorial for Heroes of the Storm. Just like, this isn't... I love Blizzard, I love their characters, I love their stories. I fucking can't play a MOBA. But Smite is definitely different in that regard, because they're, like, third person, or first person even, I think. You can switch between the two. Instead of top-down, you're following your character. I don't know. Yeah, I feel like... I don't know, the best way to describe this is, like, I always hated it whenever you see, like, someone's Draw Your Life video, or Draw My Life video, where I always hated to scroll down to the comment section, because there's always that one asshole who's like, your parents got divorced, you think that's a bad problem? It's like, everyone has problems, and it's all relative to themselves, It might not be the biggest problems in the world, like, there are starving children in Ethiopia. Great. How does that relate to this? It's, yes, people are suffering. That doesn't relate. Like, those are both terrible things. One of them obviously on a greater scale. But when you're talking about, like, someone's Draw My Life, bringing in, people who are desperately in need of charity compared to this person's darker days in their life, that's not relevant. And I always hated when I saw that. You know, I actually saw, I forget whose Draw My Life it was. I saw it a long time ago, but like towards the beginning of the video, they said like, I realized that I've had a very fortunate life compared to many others out there, but please keep in mind that everyone goes through their own problems and deals with them in their own way, so please be respectful of that. And I was like, thank you! That's sort of how it is, you know, everything's like relative to everyone. Everyone goes through their own problems and they deal with it their own ways. So it's just not acceptable to belittle someone's problems, or in this case call them selfish. Like, I've actually heard that being said, not in real life, but actually in One Piece, which John recently got into, so we've been talking about that lately, where I believe at some point, I believe it was, I don't want to spoil too much for John, but there's a character who's like thinking that she should just die to make the world a better place, and the main character, Luffy, is more, he's like completely clueless about a lot of things, but every now and then he has those moments of brilliance, and he basically says like, no, you're being selfish, I refuse. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm trying to sacrifice myself. You can't refuse that. And he's like, no, I refuse. And, you know, they're making very light of a situation. But I think, and in that case, saying, like, you're being selfish, think about everyone else, that statement did work in that situation. But obviously, that's a fictitious situation. I can imagine where that could potentially work, depending on the person's mindset. But I can't imagine that's more than, like, 0.00001% of the people, you know? Very few people who are suicidal, when they're on the verge of that, are thinking of others and how they're going to feel. They just are resigned to the fact that the world would be better off without them, and they can't really see anything else. So telling them that they're being selfish because other people will miss them is probably only going to make them feel worse. You know? Yeah. That's probably not the best thing to say. I don't know. It's just my thoughts on it. It's great that he apologized. Doesn't make him any less of an asshole, but it makes the situation a little bit lighter.
Yeah.
He's certainly not going to have any promising future in casting, that's for sure. Although I'd assume he's going to continue streaming. I don't know exactly how large he is, but he seems to be a prominent Smite streamer with 80,000 followers, over 6.5 million views on Twitch. So, I mean, he has a decently large following. I don't really do Twitch too much. Anyone who watches the channel would know I stream Twitch like maybe 6-10 times a year. That's usually because it's like, I have free time. Should I write a script for YouTube or should I stream? It's very rare that I'm that lazy that I'm like, let's just stream. You know, I usually go for the writing a script. But yeah, like, I don't know how popular that is in relation to other people on Twitch, in the overall Twitch or in the Smite community.
I mean, 6.5 million views on anything is a heck of a lot of people.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot. Then again, if he's been streaming since the very beginning, you know, that's still a lot, don't get me wrong, but like, it's easier to get if you've been streaming for a longer time. Again, not trying to belittle that fact. Let's see. It says right here, he will now focus on streaming and charity work for the rest of 2016. I'm pretty sure in his long-winded apology, he said something about he's like always been focusing on charity work. So it's not like he's just doing this to make up for it. He's always done some sort of charity work. I forget for exactly what, but I think it had something to do with mental illness or something. He said at the very end of his post, which, like, a lot of his posts, it was very hard to read out loud. Partially because there was a lot of emotion poured into it, but also because it was very illegible. It was really hard to read. There was a lot of stuff that didn't make sense when you read it aloud. And I was reading it aloud for John. It was painful to read. It took like 20 minutes. But he said something about, like, he's basically going to shut up, he's going to hole up for a while and let this whole thing blow over. He's going to also attempt to learn more about mental illness and depression specifically, so that next time he talks about this sort of thing, he can be more open and knowledgeable about it, which is something I can respect, you know.
Yeah.
Again, it doesn't make him any less of an asshole. He's definitely an asshole for what he said. That's
He's
inexcusable. And he goes in like a long rant. It's not like what I just said before. You know, like the little small quote that I said. Like I'll link the video of like a more or less a highlights reel of what he said. And it's like not pretty. It's like it's almost cringy because it's like, God damn it, shut up. You know, you're digging your grave.
mm,
I've gone off on this enough.
yeah.
As you know, I've been fortunate enough to not know anyone who's been like that depressed. Although I do know that depression runs in my father's family, so I can sort of comprehend the basics of some of it just by like relatives who, you know, they take medication and whatnot. None of them are like that depressive, but they do. Some of them are on medications to. I think one of my aunts is actually on medication for depression, and she's like, you know, she's fine, but it's. I could sort of get a grasp of it by, you know, talking to her about like just like the darker parts of her life and whatnot. It's definitely not as like full blown as something like this or someone who's actually suicidal, but it's a start to understanding, I guess. Starting to lose my voice.
Yeah. Same.
That's really all I have on this. So, I mean, do you have anything else, John? Or
No.
all right. Well, the outro is going to be quicker since, if you haven't noticed, I've simplified it quite a bit. So, be sure to leave your comments in the comment section below about any of the topics we discussed during this video, and that will be the comment question. So there's no like official comment question. It's just like, would you like to discuss anything about any of the topics we discussed?
Mm.
So, hope you liked this podcast. If you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more like it, maybe even subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Be sure to check out my partner in crime, Sirjohnmac's channel. He posts something every now and then, and it's usually pretty entertaining, whatever it is. Links for my social media and whatnot are in the description below. And do you have any closing statements, John?
Nope.
Well, that's all the time we've got for today, so until next time, don't die. Okay, so I forgot to say this before when we were recording, but this is important, so I'm putting it in now. You see, the last article that we discussed, we talked about suicide. Life is a very precious thing, and no one should ever feel the need to snuff out their spark. If you or a loved one are contemplating suicide, please seek out help. I've listed a link in the description below that has plenty of resources you can utilize if you are experiencing these kinds of troubles. And that's really all I have to say. I didn't want to sound too public servicey, but this is important and it needed to be said. So, until next time, don't die, because you deserve to live.